this is Antoine with another episode of Out and Up, where we encourage young athletes to achieve their very best outside of the game. And like every show, we have another awesome guest, and y'all know how I do. We're going to let her introduce herself.
Hi, I'm Samirah Moody. I'm from Boston, and I run track and field.
Thank you, Samirah, for joining us. Are you ready to get right into the questions?
Yes.
Okay. So, Samirah, you already said you're from Boston. Is that where you were born and raised?
Yes. Born and raised.
All right. How long have you been running track?
I would say competitively, I was really getting into it about 7th grade. So I was probably about 12. But I had done meets before that, but it wasn't anything serious.
What distances do you actually run?
I'm a short sprinter, so mainly the 100 and the 200 and sometimes the 400.
Oh, all right. And so you're currently in college, but in high school, what schools did you actually attend and run for?
I went to the Rivers School first in Weston, Mass, and then I transferred to Buckingham, Brown and Nichols in Cambridge, Mass.
All right. What are some of your accomplishments or some of the things you were able to accomplish on that level in high school when it came to track and field?
I was able to break the league records for the 100, 200, and long jump. I was able to be Mass like number one in the state in the 1 and the 2, and break the state records for the 1, the 2, and the 60 for indoor and outdoor. And then I was able to go to nationals. I won nationals for the 200. I've been at nationals and placed in different rankings depending on the year, but I was able to be an All-American at least 10 times. So it was a good high school career, I think.
All right. And so what has that experience been like for you, being able to run and place nationally? How has that felt?
Yeah, I think it held a lot of weight because Mass isn't known for sprinters. New England really isn't known for sprinters in general. So I think it kind of shocked a lot of people for me to kind of come out there, and it proved to me that even though I'm not necessarily training in warm weather 24/7, doesn't mean that I can't necessarily get there on the platform. And it was a really humbling moment because I just felt like I had worked so hard, and especially with COVID and everything, to be able to like accomplish what I accomplished was really cool.
All right. And so you just touched on it. I know for so many athletes, that's been a tough thing the last couple of years, like COVID and that downtime. Did that affect you a lot as far as training?
Yeah, it definitely did. I think access to facilities was very tough being in a liberal state because the restrictions were much more enforced. So we actually weren't able to practice in an indoor track. So once the snow came down, it was on the ground, we were kind of at a loss. You know, you can't really practice on the track with the snow. So we didn't have an indoor facility. So not many people know that, but me and my coach were in like a little indoor turf facility like 2 times a week. And yeah, it was hard. It wasn't traditional training, and it's not what people recommend. So it was kind of tough mentally, but I think that time off kind of gave me like a reset to kind of realize my motivations for like why I like to do the sport. And then I also think I was able to do a lot more with my brother, who's also an athlete, and be able to like train at home, like lift at home, make sure that like I'm getting up and doing runs. So I got into like a lot more disciplined routine than what I'm used to, for sure.
Wow, that's awesome. And so you kind of touched on it, but I'm gonna ask you and we're gonna lead right to that question. What is it that inspired you to start running?
Well, my mom ran track in college. She's a collegiate athlete at Boston University. So that's part of the reason why I didn't touch track till so late, because she felt as though she wanted me to just try a bunch of things. But when I first started, I hated track because it was exhausting, and if I didn't eat enough, I would pass out. If I ate too much, I'd throw up, and it was just like a hot mess. And then my body hurt. And it's just like it's not enjoyable to train in track. It's a very individual sport, so you're not like laughing and joking with your team a lot. But I did fall in love with the idea that like there's no limits in track. I mean, like you're running against you, it's you and the clock. Like the clock is your biggest competitor, it's not the person next to you. And that kind of excites me because the person next to you is always going to change, their ability is always going to change, but my ability and what I can do is like, it's the sky's the limit. And if I keep pushing myself to a certain level, I could potentially have a record or do something that nobody else has ever done. And that is just like so fascinating to me. And that's kind of what drives me to kind of keep going, because I don't, as humans, we don't really know our limits. So especially in track, I'm like, I just keep pushing it because I don't really know where I could go, and I could potentially end up being something great.
Did you play any other sports growing up?
Yeah, I think I tried everything, honestly. I played soccer for the longest. That's what I continued up until my sophomore year of high school. I tried baseball, I tried softball, I did swimming, I did gymnastics, I did dance. I mean, I think I really tried everything. My parents put me in everything just to like keep me busy. But
all right. And so at what point did you just kind of feel like, hey, track is it, I'm gonna zone in and I'm gonna really give my all to track? At what point did you kind of make that decision?
I think it's something that was like geared up towards for a while, because especially with soccer being my other like main sport kind of, it was just feedback that I always got, like, you're always out running the ball, or like, don't even worry about doing all these skills, like just run up the field and we'll get you the ball so you can, do what you have to do. And so speed was always like on my side in a way. And even though I didn't like the training in track, I saw that it was probably my strong suit. And then I just like, my motivations came in and I fell in love with the idea of track and what I could do. And that just, propelled me forward in that direction.
All right. And so we're going to get into just the high level that you're able to run that and where you're actually located at as far as school. But for the young middle school or say high school athlete, what are some of the things you did just as you continue to grow and get better? What are some of the things you did away from your team practices to really, just improve your times?
I think eating is crucial. People don't talk about it, but you start your day off wrong with the wrong breakfast and you're already stacking odds against you for practice later on in the day. Like, it's just something that people don't talk about. Eating and sleep has been my biggest like thing, because once I started actually getting the good amount of sleep that I needed and making sure that the morning of the race, I'm eating these things, and like the week of the race, I am hydrating a certain way, I'm eating a certain thing, I'm making sure that my electrolytes are in and like how much protein I have, that all impacted those 20 something seconds that I'm on the track. And, it's like, it's not something that you think about consciously, but I mean, even to give your all at practice, you eat the wrong thing, your practice was useless. Like the hours that you put in, you might've been there, but you weren't able to perform at your highest potential. And that impacts you for the race. So, I don't know, eating and sleep is something that I don't think is emphasized enough in middle school and high school. And obviously we have like work and things, so it's kind of tough, but it definitely changed the game for me, for sure.
All right. So we want to be nosy a little bit. A morning breakfast for Samirah, what might that include? A nice healthy breakfast for the young athlete. What would that include?
I think it was just like a typical day. I'm definitely gonna try to get eggs, bacon, and some sort of like carbs. And then also making sure that I have juice, making sure I have water and a fruit. And that's just like solid. But if it's race day, I try to keep it light and like something that sticks. So like oatmeal and fruit, no like smoothies or nothing like heavy. But yeah, it really just depends on the day, for sure.
All right. And so you're now a collegiate athlete. Out of high school, you made a decision as far as what college you were going to. What college did you actually attend right out of high school?
Villanova University.
All right. But you're in your freshman year, and you're now currently a student where at? Let all those that don't know where you're actually running at now.
I'm at USC, the University of Southern California.
All right. So in that transition from high school to college, what were some of the things that you looked for as far as choosing a school to attend and continue your career?
I definitely was looking at team dynamic, because I think that that's a really big deal. I mean, you spend so many hours with your team during the week, and then you're traveling with them, And those end up being like your friend group for a lot of people. So that was just like a big deal, making sure that that's a healthy environment and like they, have fostered a good community there. But then also my relationship with my coach was like very, very, very important to me, making sure that the person that's leading me and guiding me, one, has my best interest, but is understanding, and like kind of actually wants to get to know me outside the sport, because everything outside the sport is going to flow into the sport in some way, shape, or form. So those were like my top two.
All right. And so you then made the decision to go on the West Coast. Like, what was that decision like, being on the East Coast your whole life, and then you make the decision to be a Trojan and go over to Southern Cal? What was that decision like?
It's definitely a lot. I think it took a lot of strength, I think, to pull myself from what is home and what's comfortable, to come over here. It became more than just the sport. I mean, this is like kind of like a lifetime decision, where you go to schools, where you network, and all that. So I don't know, I'm still grappling with it a little bit. I think that I just wanted to make a decision where I gave myself the best shot at being the best that I could be. And I just felt like here was a better fit for me. But the West Coast is definitely unlike anything I've ever seen before. It's warmer, the speed is different, the lifestyle. So that's still something I'm like trying to adjust to even right now.
Okay. All right. So when it comes to track first, before we get into the academic end of it, when it comes to track, like, what are some of your goals that you set for yourself, just as far as running at the highest level? What are some goals you have for yourself?
I think the basics are just progress. I mean, I never want to be like stagnant, or just doing the same thing all the time. I feel like that really defeats the purpose of training in general. So every year I want to progress. Every year I want to get stronger and healthier and, develop better habits. But like more tangibly, I have time goals. I would love to just get, sub 11, and kind of like, once you get in that territory, you're kind of among the greats. So that's something that's very important to me in the 100, and the 200, just, time wise as well, getting down in that. But also just being able to kind of compete regardless. I mean, there's so many good athletes, but in track you stand alone. So I want to be able to, go out there and just compete. It doesn't matter who I'm next to or what they've done, and be able to kind of get out there and just do what I have to do.
All right. And so being early in your college career, like, what are some of the difficult things that the young student athlete may have to really be prepared for when it comes to transitioning from one level to the next?
I think time management is huge. I mean, you spend a lot of hours, whether it's in practice, whether it's lifting, or it's just like recovery. And then you're also spending hours trying to eat correctly, and you have meeting, and it's just like, it's very draining. I think that's something that I'm glad that I developed in high school, because I think it would have been hard to come to college and have all this and then still have work. And like, like you're still a student. They really stress student athletes. So it's really important that you have that type of skill. And then also just have some type of why, like why you came, because I think it's easy to get lost in all this. It's easy to kind of get a little discouraged sometimes when it's overwhelming. So, it is important to have a reason so that you can hold on to that when times get tough.
And that's good. That's good. So now we're going to go ahead and transition into the classroom. Like the biggest goal with the show, again, we want kids to really zone in on being their very best on the field and the sport that they're playing. But I think it's so much important to have something to fall back on even when the sport is gone. So just really focusing on the education and ways that you can kind of give back to your community and things like that. So I'll ask you, when it comes to academics, let us know just the things that you've been able to do even on the classroom and from high school, just so the young athlete can see just how important even education is to you.
Education is extremely important to me. My parents were educated, so that was always stressed in our house. So I didn't get to go to practice until I did my homework. So that's just for me. But I think in high school, I definitely branched out and tried to take APs. and just tried to just be involved in general, because nobody wants to just be an athlete. Everyone
Right.
is an athlete. So academically, obviously you take your classes, but I think even beyond that, the extracurriculars is like extremely important. I was in a bunch of clubs in high school. I did debate. I did like the BSU stuff, like Black Student Union. I just kind of try to stay involved, because even like the more involved I was in clubs, I felt like my teachers had a little bit more respect for me as a person. And I've kind of tried to carry that into college as well.
All right. And so one of the things I want to kind of touch on this show, and I speak on it a lot here and there, but I think it's important that our athletes understand that the opportunities, especially when you're able to perform at a high level and have larger platforms, whether it's the school you're at, or even if you go on, from a professional standpoint, to understand that, for one, it's a blessing to make it to those levels. However, also understanding that those are opportunities for you to, whether it's give back in some way to the younger athletes coming along, or even just utilizing your voice, in that platform that you have to really address some of the different things that we may have going on in our country. So I know it was some years back when we had, a lot of the different things going on with social injustice, that Samirah, you were able to use your voice and I won't even say a platform, because you were very young in high school at that time, but the things were going on in Charlottesville, Virginia, and the way some things were addressed at the first high school you were at, I believe, correct?
Yes.
You spoke up. If you can tell us a little bit about that story and just how you were able to really be a leader during that time.
Yeah, the first high school I went to, I'll just preface, it was a PWI, it was a predominantly white institution, in a very, very wealthy town in Massachusetts, not where I lived. So I was bused in with a lot of other kids. And I think A, it was a culture shock, but B, I got to kind of see how the other side kind of lives and functions. And I think that especially when things came up in the news and in the media, sometimes I'd see how the head of schools would give speeches that kind of, to me, seemed very neutral, and then kind of just saying, oh, like, we need to see both sides. And that kind of touches me in a different way, because as a Black woman, my identity is tied to the things that are going on in this world. And so when movements are happening, when people are being hurt, especially people in my community, I kind of take that to heart. And I just decided to kind of fuel that energy into something positive. So I just kind of got involved. I tried to start a student program to just kind of like address those issues and kind of create an open forum for the faculty and the students to speak their mind. And what came out of that was actually a faculty workshop that I was able to run with another student at my previous high school. And we basically just were able to like open up their eyes and basically tell them, like, this is how students feel here when this happens, or, okay, there are some faculty here who are not necessarily fostering a diverse and inclusive environment. And it was hard conversations to have, but I think it was something that was necessary and something that prepared me for, the world I'm in right now, because a lot of the big colleges that everyone wants to go to, D1, Kentucky, Oregon, USC, they're predominantly white institutions. So, and even after this, the world is, how it is. So you have to learn how to navigate it. And I think it prepared me well for some of the stuff that I was going to encounter later on.
And that's awesome, Samirah. I definitely commend you for just taking that leadership role. I believe that's the one thing we miss across the board in this world. And I'm not just talking about a generation specific, but just leaders that don't mind, speaking up and taking that stance, and really being the one to kind of be the forerunner in movements, to just make sure we continue to fight for those things that are still not in place. And so I definitely commend you on that. Now, I think I read in one of the articles, and I don't know if you know anything about whether it's still in place from you doing that, there was at the time an event that was started. Do you know if it's still going on at this time? Like, it was something called the Day of Consideration or something that they started?
Yeah, it is still going on, actually, which I'm excited about, because that school has actually changed a lot. I've been back there. And one, their diversity is like off the charts now, but also it's just very different how they operate. And I'm definitely excited, and I commend them for making those changes.
All right. And I think you pulled the covers back on something, because so often it's easy for us to assume that this is how a person is going to be, this is how they're always going to be. But sometimes once we do things like even you taking the leadership role that you did, maybe it allows the other side, or those that are not aware, to then become aware of what we may be going through as a people. And so it's easy to sit back and say, nah, that's just how people are going to be. But then sometimes situations like yours, where you said now the diversity at the school has changed so much, and even them starting an annual event just from you stepping up and doing the awesome job you did as a leader. So definitely, again, I know I already said it once, Samirah, but I definitely commend you on that. And I hope that the young athlete that watches this episode will just take that to heart, to know that those opportunities, and again, you were just in high school, so now even being at a large university like a USC, just the platform that you have to continue walking out that fight for justice for all, I think is awesome, Samirah. And so keep doing the awesome job that you're doing.
Thank you.
And so I didn't touch on it yet. What are you actually majoring in?
I'm currently majoring in communications, and I'm trying to double major in communications and law.
Okay. All right. Do you have some plans outside of sports? Do you have an idea? And I know early in school, but do you have an idea on some things, from a career standpoint, that you would like to walk into?
Yeah, I think I have an idea. It's early, but I think going to law school is something that I'm very, very interested in, which is why I'm trying to kind of get on the pre-law track as well. But I also think a part of me is very much an activist and very, very passionate about social justice. And so trying to find a career path that is sustainable and right up my alley is something that I'm still searching for. But I'm definitely kind of along those lines, trying to figure something out that aligns with my passions.
All right. So give a couple tips real quick. The young athlete that's able to compete on a high level, or just compete on the collegiate level after leaving high school. What are some things that they have to get ready for when it comes to really balancing? I know we talk about it on the high school level, but I understand that college is a different level when it comes to, one, making sure you have your academics in play, but really balancing the hard work of preparing for that sport at that level. What advice would you give them on really preparing for being a student athlete on the collegiate level?
Yeah, I think learning self-advocacy is very, very important. Learning how to advocate for yourself. As an athlete, you have a lot of resources. Most likely a lot of institutions have tutors and people willing and ready to help you. But unfortunately, I think you come out of high school, and sometimes depending on where you were, there's kind of a stigma about asking for help. And it's just very important to learn how to do that, and when to tell people, like, yes, like I need support because I'm struggling, or like this is a lot, or this is overwhelming. Because these people want you to succeed. You can't play your sport unless you are succeeding in the classroom. And so it's very, very, very important to learn to kind of just, it's a humbling experience, but it's okay to just be like, I need help. And that's something that I had to learn too.
Okay. And I didn't ask you when we were talking about all your accomplishments, but I do want to kind of go back with everything you were able to accomplish and achieve in track in Massachusetts and everything. Like, what is it that kept you grounded and really focused during that time? What kept you humble when you were achieving all the different things that you did?
I think that it was great, but on a state and region wide level, I felt that being number one was not enough, because I felt that there was more competition out there, and I felt that there could always be someone who was training harder than me or was doing better than me. And that thought in itself is like enough to keep me up at night and make me, want to get up and study my races or go on a jog or do whatever I need to do to get better. And until I'm actually at that spot and can stay at that spot and be at the top, that's when I'll probably be satisfied. But I don't think I've reached that point yet.
All right. And I know already from talking to you, some of the things I've read and seen already that you're a young person that really understands that the sport is what you do, but it's not who you are. What could you say to the young athlete just in preparation? Because I think the biggest thing for me is always just making sure the young athlete doesn't make it to the college level or even the pro level and then have no clue of who they are because they've been so locked into that sport. So if you could just speak to the young athlete about really understanding that the sport is what they do and not who they are. If you can touch on that for me real quick.
Yeah, I think there's experiences in everyone's life that tells them that they are not just an athlete because you're not in your uniform or your gear day in and day out. And I think there have been times when that reminder was external, like people, came and kind of approached me in a way where, because when you're an athlete, you do get privileges, but I think when you don't get them, that's kind of an interesting experience in itself. But I think that for the most part, like, I think that your identity is like multifaceted. And for me, I don't even know how to like word it. I just feel like in general, I do the sport, but I can't like relieve my stress in the sport, or I can't,
Gotcha.
I don't know, like the sport, it doesn't fulfill me in that
Gotcha.
sense, because I have so many other things that I want to do. And sometimes the sport becomes like an ends to a means where, this sport is getting me my education, or this sport is getting me indoors and meeting people and like opportunities. But that's literally why it's not the end all be all, because at the end of the day, my education is what I'm happy about. And so I'm doing the sport to get a free education, or I'm happy about doing this, so I get this. And it's kind of a trade-off. I think that for everyone, it's really important, because in college, the sad truth is like your body it's not indestructible. There's times when people get hurt. Sometimes mentally, you're not in the right place to perform your sport, or you're just not performing at a high level. And, that comes with a lot of pressure too. Sometimes people may be like disappointed, or you may be disappointed in yourself. And it's sad because there's a lot of mental health things that go on with athletes in college that I think people don't talk about. When your sport, like when you're not at the top, how you were in high school, because in college, like the margin between you and the person next to you is like 0.0001. Like you guys were both the best that you were both on varsity teams. You were both this and that. So yeah, I think it's hard because you start to feel inadequate. And the thing that helps you not feel inadequate is having things outside of the sport and having things to go to that you look forward to, that is not just practice or game. And that's what comes with like the balance. Also, I know this is like kind of veering off from your question, but like having a social life and like finding a way to balance that and your work and school, like, because it's not all one or the other. And you need the other thing, you need the social life to help you be more appreciative of the moments in your sport where it's not really going so well.
That's good. That's good. I appreciate you for that answer. You could have went on as long as you wanted to, Samirah. I think that was great information that our young athletes definitely need to hear. And so I asked, in running track, like, are you a student of the sport? Like, do you have some professional track stars that you've looked up to, or you really just follow, or you followed in the past? Do you?
I think a very interesting one for me has been Gabby Thomas, just because she's from Boston. She's not from Boston, but she went to school in Boston at Harvard. And Harvard is an Ivy League school, so it's not necessarily like one of those big SEC schools. And it's interesting because it's like she's pursuing a hard degree, like at one of the best schools in the country. And she was able to come out of high school being kind of average and comes out of college and kind of just propels herself on this path to be a professional and be great and then go be an Olympian. And I just like that story because it's about development and it's about growth. And that's something that I'm really big on. There are some people who are just ridiculously talented out of high school and they've always been at the top. And then they get to college and they just stay there. And that's great because they were always at this like extreme level of talent. But if you're not growing, then the process itself becomes sluggish and it becomes boring. And it's also just like, it's frustrating because you feel like you're not going anywhere. And that's something that I'm excited about because there are people who do great things and they're at these really big schools. But I think it is exciting to watch someone develop because it gives hope to people who may wanted to have gone D1 but couldn't, and they're at a D2 or a D3 program, or you're at a junior college and you're trying to make it to kind of a big school. Like, it's okay. Your path can be non-traditional. It can be kind of it's not under the limelight, but you can make it to the place that you want to make. Like, it's not impossible. And I really like that.
That's good. That's good. And so one of my questions is I have to ask it every show because I will continue to ask this question because I believe our young people need to hear from different aspects just to remind them to stay focused, stay out of trouble. But how important is it to have positive people in your circle?
It's huge. I mean, I think my mom was always like, oh, don't hang out with certain people because they can lead you down the wrong path. But like, I'm like, okay, yeah, whatever, mom. But like, you get to college and you see like, you could have everything going for you. You have all the pieces of the puzzle and they're in place. And like, everyone's one decision away from, something really unfortunate happening. And I think that part of that is who you surround yourself with. One crazy night, and there's a lot of crazy nights in college. I'm be honest, doesn't matter if you're an athlete or not. You can get caught up in something and it ruins it for you. And I've seen it happen to people, unfortunately. And it's something that I think, surround yourself with like-minded people and know your goals and motivations before you go into college, whether it's writing it down on a piece of paper, do whatever process you need to do so that you have that constant reminder, because it's so easy in the world and college, doesn't matter what level you're at, to just, stray away.
Okay. That's good. That's good. And so again, I appreciate you, Samirah, and all the questions that you've answered. I know that there's been some good information I know will be a big help to a young student athlete that will watch this. I always even feel like there's going to be coaches that will be able to take some of this information back to their students or their athletes that they're coaching. But the last question I always ask, who or what is it that inspires you in life?
Oh, inspire me in life. That's a good question. Well, I like to see strong Black women succeed. That's just my like kind of like go get the bag type thing. So I don't know, literally any. That's crazy to say, but any strong Black woman. I see like Gabriella Union. Just seeing where I don't know, even like no one talks about Savannah James, like LeBron James's wife, but like just women who are like doing it classy and like keeping it together, and they're rich in the meanwhile. Like that's dope. I like stuff like that. But
it wouldn't hurt to have that sprinkled on top.
Yeah.
That's cool. Well, I appreciate you again, Samirah, for joining us. You continue doing an awesome job at USC. Looking forward to the big things that you're going to be able to do and continue and improving in the sport that you're playing. So we thank you for taking some time out of your busy schedule to just really give back and give some awesome information. And thank you for joining us.
Of course. Thank you.
And so for those watching, once again, we've had another awesome show with another awesome guest. I promise you, if you watch the whole show, there's some information that you'll be able to take back to that young student athlete, no matter what sport they play. And y'all know how I always do, and what I always say at the end of every show, it is good to be awesome in that sport you're playing, but it's even better to be great in life. So if you're trying to achieve your very best outside of the game, you have to really focus on yourself entirely. And so Samirah talked about it today when it comes to your identity and just preparation. And she's a perfect example of just using the opportunity and the platform that she has to really speak out and be a leader when it comes to social injustice. And so I challenge you as a young person to do the same. Find those ways that you can help to really give back to your community. But after that, I challenge you to continue to join us as we go out and up. Thank you again for joining us. Have a good one.